Welcome to Transform Now, brought to you by SSNC, where we explore the future of work through the lens of AI. Across industries, leaders are rethinking strategy, culture, and operations to harness AI's full potential. This podcast gives you the insights and ideas to transform your organization, stay competitive, and thrive in a world driven by change. Let's get into the show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Transform Now. I'm Brad Hairston.
And I'm Michael Marchuk.
And this is the weekly pulse check. We are taking a look at what is going on in the world of automation and AI. We chose some interesting news headlines, and Michael and I are going to break them down for you. So let's get started. First article is from the Wall Street Journal. It's titled, Amazon's CEO's talks with U.S. officials triggered crackdown on Anthropic models. So the big story of the past week, as everyone is well aware, Anthropic's Fable model, which is hot off the press and everyone, very much anticipating that model, it got shut down by the U.S. government. So this story says, it's all the news is focusing on, how big of a deal it is that the U.S. government shut this down. The real story is the fact that it might be because this guy, Andy Jassy, was having kind of a backdoor conversation with the Treasury. And you might say, well, he's probably, he's with one of the other frontier models, or, he's a critic of Anthropic. No, he's also one of their biggest investors. So this is a very strange story. Just all the web, the crazy web of conflict. There's so many different players involved. So Michael, what did you think about this article? Break it all down for us.
If I can break it all down, but this actually mirrors very, very closely what we're seeing with the G7 meeting, where leaders of the largest countries in the world are getting together. And part of that includes CEOs from a bunch of the AI frontier model companies. And I just think it's interesting how geopolitics and AI have converged at the political level like this. So the world we are in is getting more and more complex as we go, isn't it? So the idea behind this is that in the discussions they were having, Amazon was having, was saying, hey, we've been using this, Amazon had gotten early access to the Anthropic model. So they've been using this internally to be able to validate and test things themselves. And Amazon said, hey, we've seen that after you've released this, that there's still some activity that we were able to do, which could be leveraged by nefarious folks to find specific vulnerabilities in software. And this could be used by, our foreign adversaries, put that in quotes, to be able to do something nefarious. And there really wasn't a way for them to take care of that or fix that. In fact, you already know there's kind of bad blood between the current United States government administration and Anthropic.
Yes.
And because of that, there could be some perceived backlash because of the power of this model and the fact that they didn't play well or play nicely with the U.S. government earlier in the year. But Anthropic said, no, we're not going to, we can't just fix that part as we release it. So the government issued the ultimatum, well, then you'll just need to take it down. And so that's what they did. They shut it down. And, as you mentioned before, there's these interconnections between the folks who are investors, plus those in power in the administration who have sway over things. And this has been debated on LinkedIn and a bunch of other places now a couple times here over, related to what happens when the models that you're using now can be shut down or access can be turned off either by the provider willingly. Maybe you didn't pay your bill, maybe there's something else going on, or a government globally says, no, you can't use this model for some reason. This introduces risk to organizations who are now starting to build a whole lot of capability into their internal operations, leveraging these frontier models. And it's not just the frontier models, it's any model that has this potential, but the frontier models get the most views and the most headlines. So it does bring up a new risk factor for folks as they're leveraging AI in their organization, and something for the people to keep a watch over. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so ironic because Amazon is Anthropic's largest investor. They're also their chip supplier.
Yep.
And yet they're tipping off the government to some concerns that lead to this shutdown. So very, very strange, just the kind of the conflict of interest story going on here. This was, by the way, one of the first examples of the government using the Export Control Authority to shut down a software company. Usually that is focused on hardware,
right?
But this seems to be a pivot point along those lines. So maybe we'll see more of that coming. But probably one of the funniest things about the whole story was the way that Anthropic rebutted it, and they said, "Look, this was easy to detect. You could use GPT 5.5 to find these vulnerabilities, and it's no big deal." So they're pointing to other models to say these models could detect these vulnerabilities in Fable, and it's good that they did, but I don't know that increases people's confidence in Fable or makes them feel better about it. I don't know. It's kind of a weird way to come to your defense, but
yeah, again,
weird world.
I believe it's one of those things where, hey, other models can do it. Why are you picking on us? Type of thing. And there's some justification for thinking that way, because potentially it is that way. But you have to go back to the earlier headline of the year saying from Anthropic, hey, this model is so powerful, we're reluctant to release it to the wild yet. So they kind of set the tone with their own PR. Maybe it was justified, but they did set the tone saying, yeah, we got to watch this.
No doubt. Yeah, exactly. All right, moving on to article number 2. This is from TMC Net. This takes a look at the pharmaceutical industry and how they're doing in the whole AI space. And the article is titled Universal AI Adoption, Limited Impact. Trinity's TGAS Advisors, they're a benchmarking and advisory firm, by the way, exposes pharma's execution gap. So this is bringing forward the basically recent survey results that say that 100% of the organizations that TGAS went out and surveyed have adopted Gen AI. And so it's no longer about, are people going to adopt it? Are they going to use it? Everybody's using it. The differentiator, in their opinion, now has moved from adoption to execution and governance. Put those two together. So what did you think about this article, Michael?
Well, it's not a surprise that they had 100% of the surveyed organizations that said, yeah, of course we use it in some capacity. So I think nearly every organization has looked at it in some way or another and is in some form of adoption, whether it's, hey, we're trying to pilot now, to, hey, we actually have our first agent up and running, whatever the issue is. There's certainly adoption in the mix. The bigger takeaway from those, the confidence that was expressed as part of this here. They said just 3 out of 5 described their organization as somewhat prepared to be able to use AI in their organization. So that's
not a confidence building, is it?
No. When 60% of the people start serving, like, yeah, I think we're ready. That could be an issue, right? And the other thing too that was interesting is that 25% of the budgets are less than 25% of the budgets were allocated towards innovation initiatives. And that kind of tracks for most larger organizations, because you think about the budgets and the way they spend, a lot of it's just keeping the lights on, and we're sort of run business as usual type of operations. But when they start looking at that, when I start looking in more a broader context of the innovation budget, we've seen with some other organizations how they burn through tokens so darn quickly that they're probably looking at this again, thinking, well, if these other organizations, which we may perceive as far more advanced than we are in terms of adoption, are already burning through budgets like that, are we really prepared? Should we put more budget in this when in fact it may not necessarily return some ROI? So there's a huge gap there. And I think one of the biggest telling features of this is they said that 2/3 of these organizations didn't have a chief digital officer or a chief AI officer working through the issues. So if you have your CIO managing this, it likely will be focused on the costs and maybe minor innovation. When you're talking about a chief digital officer or a chief AI officer, they're far more focused on the risk profiles for AI specifically, the cost, the model management, all the concepts that are very, very much AI focused that a CIO just doesn't have the time of day to be able to support. Mm-hmm. So not having a leader in that role, I think would contribute to the fact that 3 out of 5 of these people surveyed said, hey, we're not really sure if we're prepared for this. So it sounds like the pharma industry is a broad brushstroke sense, has some catching up to do in terms of staffing the roles that are going to help them be successful with AI.
Yeah, that last point you make, I think is a good one. I recently interviewed Mahi Rahisam from Lilly and Company on the podcast, and he's in a very unique role. I think it's like senior information officer or something, but it's very, very, very focused on AI strategy, AI deployment within their organization, and it's separate and distinct from the broader, kind of traditional CIO capacity. And I do think these pharmas that don't have someone that's really, looking out for that and 100% focused on it, that's a telltale sign that they're not going in the right direction, because it is all consuming, as we know. There's just so much to sort out, and especially
it changes so quickly.
It changes quickly, and when you're in a highly, highly regulated industry like the pharma space, I mean, right. you can't. It's one thing just to keep up with the regulatory changes, but with the technology changes and all that at the same time, it's just it's tough to mind the farm, if you will. The animals will get loose, as they said. All right, let's move on to article number 3. This is from Artificial Intelligence News, and it features Accenture, and it says consumers show growing trust in AI shopping agents. So we've touched on this in the past. It's been a while, and the whole idea of we're turning portions of our lives over to AI. We're using AI in so many different ways. Are people really ready to hand over shopping to an AI agent? And so, according to recent Accenture research, 3/4 of people say that they would trust an AI agent more than their best friend to make a purchase for them. But if you read past that headline, and you'll find that there's a distinction in where they'll allow AI to take over versus what they want to do themselves. So break that down for us, Michael.
Sure. So first of all, I'm pretty sure that if I asked you to make a purchase for me, you would likely buy me another taco shirt like this. So I'm guessing it's probably a good idea to allow some kind of leeway here. But the idea that 3/4 of consumers would say, yeah, I think I'd let an AI agent kind of do something for me. looked interesting. They included deal negotiation, complaint resolution, subscription renewals, and product reorders. Those are kind of low impact kind of things because complaint resolution, if you've ever had to deal with that, I'm sure most of us had, whether you've done a chat bot or had to call in a call tree somewhere to talk with customer support or whatnot. I think that would be something I would be gladly handing off to an AI agent because it is getting kind of frustrating. But when they were asked if they'd be able to say, hey, well, would you allow it to make a purchase decision on your behalf? Actually, a third of them said, yeah, within a defined limit, I think I'd be okay with that, which is interesting that they would move, that consumers we felt that confident within that. I think the limitations might have helped say that, hey, if I want to set a $10 budget for this year or whatever the number is, now that makes sense if it's limiting it. But the Allstate report said that 1 in 10 would allow an agent to initiate and complete purchases within specific boundaries. Meaning, listen, I can't even think about this here. Go ahead and buy what I need to buy. So in those kind of cases, I'm looking at, I would say, in the kind of our adoption curve, those are early adopters who are very comfortable with setting boundaries and letting technology take care of things. And I can see for maybe some low risk things, hey, we're out of dishwashing detergent. Can you make sure that we order it and we don't even have to worry about it? And this way, your refrigerator is polled by the agent to find out how much we have in the fridge and says, okay, we've got this amount of food here, or we've looked at this here, and you've normally gone through dishwashing detergent every 68 days. So at the 64th day, I'm going to buy it to make sure you have enough for the 68th day. Okay, there's low risk there, but still, it's interesting to see that even that 1 in 10 people would say, yeah, I'd let AI do that, and within a budget, yeah, sure. I'd give it the credit card and let it do its thing. So I see this as a kind of a parallel, which we've talked about before, a parallel towards where we were in the early days with the internet. And do I really want to put a credit card on this website? I'm not really sure. And now nearly all of us, without thinking, put the credit card number in and push buy. So I think that's the sort of where we're at in this whole adoption of letting agents purchase for us. And I know there are several initiatives that are being kind of bantered about moving forward, allowing AI agents to have access to funding sources. I'll leave it at that because it could be a number of different ways of doing this, but having their own money basically to manage on their own and to make these types of purchases. So interesting concept, definitely worth looking at, and something for folks who are in the consumer brand sector, who are maybe not used to having non-human entities purchase from them. They may start thinking through this in a different way, as in terms of their marketing, in terms of their websites, their way they do their purchase orders and whatnot. So interesting. Watch this one.
Yeah, it's interesting that the survey said only 12% are comfortable with autonomous decisions at the payment stage. So trust seems to break down a little bit when you're talking about the actual transaction, exchange of money.
I still think that's high. I mean, really, 1 in 10, pull them off the street and they'd say, yeah, I'm okay with giving my credit card away to my agent to let them do whatever they want.
Right. But it makes me wonder, when I think about this, I would prefer an agent to do all the pre-work for me. Like I tell it what I'm interested in, it goes off and then comes back and says, here are your top 3 options. And then I can pick and choose from there, and I can be a part of the transaction. I'm less comfortable with just saying, this is what I'm looking for, and it goes off and buys it.
So you are not one of those 10. You're one of the 9 out of the 10.
I'm not there yet. I could be won over at some point, though. But the survey also said consumers do like to keep control over things tied to their identity or enjoyment. So, they'll let agents go off and restock their shelves with groceries or what have you. But when it comes to like picking out a hotel room or a clothing item, something very specific like that, they're less likely to let the agent do it. They want to have some, human in the loop say in that process. So
Otherwise, they end
yeah,
up with more taco shirts like I got it.
that's right. Or my crab shirt, because I'm crabby. I'm in a crab mood. All right, let's move on. Article number 4. This is also from Artificial Intelligence News. Insurers pivot AI strategy toward core risk underwriting. So we don't talk about the insurance industry all that much on this program. We should talk about it more because they're certainly being disrupted like every other industry, every other sector of the financial services world. But this is talking about, the fact that insurers have spent years competing on AI ambition, and now they're competing on, disclosed ROI. I mean, actual dollars in terms of their annual reports. So this agentic shift for them, according to this article, is very steep. So Michael, when an industry does start publishing AI returns in their annual reports, like these companies that are mentioned, what kind of signal do you think that sends?
Well, a couple of different things. One is sort of the maturity that they're approaching. The second is understanding that this doesn't happen overnight. So because of that maturity, they've been thinking about this for a while. And given the specific industry that they're in, not only is it regulated, but it's also very risk adverse. So getting to this point, they've probably taken a lot of governance into play when they've moved forward to here, which is very important to understand. And unlike the pharma industry where there's so few leaders in charge, they indicate that nearly 40% of insurers have some senior leader responsible for AI. So that's a much bigger number. And it again reflects the fact that these organizations are taking this seriously and have an understanding of how best to mitigate that type of risk by having leaders who are accountable for the outcomes, to not only manage risk, but also to scale it and ensure that decisions are consistent. So there's a lot of really good stuff as part of that. The other part that I thought was interesting is that going back to the workforces that these organizations, think of insurance, insurance organizations, in my mind, I think of like claims underwriters and a lot of administration behind the scenes. But they indicate that the insurance workforce in general has shrunk by 2.2%, but AI specialist roles grew by a third. So a huge jump in the AI specialties within insurance, which kind of makes it, shows a commitment towards it. And they said that AI talent now makes up 1 in 50 employees inside of a generic insurance company. Now, I'm sure there's differences across insurance organizations, but just identifying that the fact that this is is such an important process for them to move forward with and really become, maybe remain competitive. It's interesting to see. The reason why it makes a difference is because we look at, any insurance organization, the bulk of their costs are made up of the premium costs, right? Anything that comes to the claims that's going against the premiums. So any kind of improvement they can get in managing those claims more effectively, or being more proactive in how they approach the folks who they're providing insurance to, can make a huge difference in their financial outcome. So again, all this stuff, interesting to see, and it's a neat window inside of a more mature industry from an AI perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it is. The numbers are staggering. I mean, they went from 1 in 4 disclosed AI use cases in this industry that showed evidence of agentic orchestration. It's now 1 in 4 versus 1 in 20 just 6 months ago.
Right.
So that's a 5x jump in 2 quarters that the article points out. So orchestration across the policy and the claims life cycle and all those things, definitely there's some new momentum there, which is good to see. And I
think leadership has a lot to do with that. I mean, because like you said, there's leaders who are really focused on this. So again, going back to what we talked about earlier, if you don't have the leadership, you're less likely to be prepared for it. When you do have the leadership, you're seeing some major gains. So should be worthy of noting that.
And the article features a really interesting Zurich example or case study, just about how they've seen a huge surge as a result of using AI and agentic AI. So that another good proof point to kind of drive this home.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go to story number 5. This is from Build Fast with AI, and it's titled "Claude Becomes an iPhone Option: Anthropic's Biggest Consumer Expansion Ever." So, as if Claude needed more momentum, more money, more customers, how about giving it another channel, which is going to explode, no doubt.
Not just another channel, the Apple iPhone channel.
The channel. So they got handed this 2 billion plus devices of consumer distribution. And, the twist is this happened right about the same time that their new model was being switched off by the government, the story we just talked about. So, Michael, do you think that this new channel, how do you think it's going to change Anthropic's trajectory? Will we even notice a change? Because it's already like a rocket ship taken off. I don't know that, it will be that noticeable, but what are your thoughts?
So I think it's going to be good for both Apple and Anthropic. Apple, as we've talked about a long time ago, seemed to be awash at sea trying to figure out what their AI strategy was, but aligning now with one of the top players in the AI frontier model segment seems like a really good move on their part. And the way they've done that is slightly different than the way you would expect. So rather than just having an API call out to the main Anthropic Claude instance, Apple will be hosting Claude within their own environment. So they have the control then over the model that's being used inside of Apple for Apple Intelligence to support that. So that gives them a leg up from a case where perhaps the latest model like Fable gets released and gets shut off on the main line, but Apple can continue to use the whatever version 4.8 that's running in their own data centers on their own infrastructure. So it could be a really good thing because this is part of Apple's secure computing initiative that they really want to make sure that they have control over this in a way that it reduces exposure of the data of their users because they hold that very, very tightly. So I think that the revenue stream for Anthropic will be there as part of this. So Apple gets a boost because they've aligned with a major player. Anthropic gets a boost because now they have this massive new audience that even if 5% of the current global user base who have an iPhone adopts Claude as their AI provider, that's still doubling the number of users that Anthropic currently has. So it's a big deal for both organizations. So I think this is very interesting and it is newsworthy because, like I said, Apple has been lagging for quite some time now. They're going to be right out front with everyone else and doing it in a way that their users have some trust in the AI that they can use because the data is going to be sort of self-contained within the Apple ecosphere.
Yeah. The most impressive statistic in this article is, Apple has 2.2 billion devices out there. Even 5% of them choose Claude. That would more than double Anthropic's user base. 5% would make that big of a difference. So I completely agree with you that the results could be mutually beneficial. And there's so many people out there on iPhones who use Claude in their work and in their personal time. And I think having the ability now to use it on their device and to guide Siri and make Siri better, which we all know is thing. I think it's definitely noteworthy.
Agreed.
Beautiful. All right, let's go to our final article. This is number 6. It's from VentureBeat. It's titled Satya Nadella warns AI could hollow out entire industries, echoing the damage done by globalization.
The sky is falling. The sky is falling.
And why would the Microsoft CEO want to be out there saying the sky is falling? Buy our software, buy our models, but by the way, the world's, crumbling down. So, so the CEO, Satya Nadella, published an essay essentially that warned that AI could gut entire industries the same way that offshoring had an impact on IT and manufacturing for that matter. So what do you think is behind this? Is he trying to point people in the Microsoft direction and make them feel better about their Microsoft decisions? Is he trying to steer people away from the whole token fascination? What do you think's going on here, Michael?
So I think there's a combination of things. We'll start with the political thing. So as we saw with, Anthropic's model being turned off globally by one government, there's a danger to that, and he points that out. This whole centralization thing is really something that could be, your initial differentiator could be shut off for you in a moment because the model you've chosen is no longer available. So that's one of the issues. But he continues to kind of cycle back towards this idea of human capital versus token capital. And his idea that human capital, our judgment and our thought processes and what we're trying to accomplish, the purpose behind what we do, really drives stuff. Because otherwise it's just technology running in circles, which is true. If there's no purpose behind it, there's no reason to efficiency gains there, no benefit there. So the idea of maintaining a human workforce who understands the business model and understands what you're trying to accomplish is critical. And so his thought was that's only become more important as the technology barriers break down some of the efficiency issues that we may have seen in the past where potentially one company had a more efficient back end than another or something else. The reality is that that's going to level the playing field because nearly all the organizations will be using some form of technology, AI in this case, to be able to be leveled up. And the risk is concentration risk. Are they all working on the same model, which then gives them a similar benefit, if you will, or similar risk profile? Or will organizations take on separate type of risk, saying that my human capital is mine, and I really want to have a model that is more closely aligned with the way I do business rather than a traditional frontier model, which again has its benefits, but also has additional risks. So I don't know if I would say he's leaning this towards Microsoft as much as we'd like to think, but the idea is just that you need to be thinking through how this is working within your organization because budgets can blow quickly and people have innate value to the way they perceive and understand your business that an AI platform just does not. So that's what I took out of this as a broader.
Yeah. I mean, he's paid to say and do things that ultimately will benefit Microsoft and their shareholders. So there's something behind it, just the way he's positioning them, their company. They build frontier models, they run the cloud that they sit on, they partner with labs. They put themselves kind of at the center of the universe. And, I think he is, whether he's saying it or not, he's still saying that Microsoft is central to everything going on in this world and with AI and industry disruption. And you can trust us. You can trust that we're your partner in the middle of it. But it's also notable, by the way, that the same day he published this essay, there was a class action suit filed against Microsoft from their shareholders about accusing them of understating the Azure slowdown and the AI infrastructure spend. So maybe he had a little tip that was coming, and he thought, well, I'll try to
Preempt it.
yeah, apocalyptic message. I'll put it out there and get people distracted, and they won't care about this little class action suit. Who knows? You never know what's going on with those guys. Well, that's all the time we have for the Pulse Check. Thank you so much for joining. Remember, every week we publish another episode with a terrific guest. So be sure and check that out. And we'll see you here next week on the Pulse Check. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Transform Now, the podcast from SS&C. You can find all of our episodes on your favorite podcast channel, as well as YouTube. To stay on top of the hottest topics in the world of agentic automation, subscribe now. The future of work is here.